Turn up the volume for this. Right now, violence against Asian Americans is spiking across this nation. Hundreds rallies in the waves of attacks we saw in New York over the weekend, including one man whose face was slashed on a New York subway.
When I saw the box cutter holding on his hand and the reaction of other people in the train, I knew I was sloshed. And I called for help, but nobody came for help.
This crisis is hitting all corners of the Asian American community, including former NBA player Jeremy Lin, who said he was recently called coronavirus on the court. We also just learned that New York prosecutors will not bring hate crime charges against a suspect accused of stabbing an Asian American man last week. NBC's Vicky Nguyen has been digging into this story. Vicky, what is the trigger? Why have crimes against Asian Americans been spiking over the last year?
Stephanie, when I talk to the people who have been studying this rise in anti-Asian sentiment over the last year and the victims themselves, I hear two reasons. One, history, that no matter how many contributions Asian Americans make to the United States, that our history isn't taught and that we're still perceived as foreigners or outsiders. The second reason is they believe rhetoric that came out at the start of the pandemic from the highest levels, from the White House, calling it the China virus, the Kung flu, repeatedly at political rallies, and also the mocking tone, the bullying. They think that there's really no coincidence that that stoked and inflamed anti-Asian sentiment. And you'll remember last April, after those words were repeatedly used, there was a man in Texas who stabbed a father and his 2-year-old and 6-year-old while they were shopping at a Sam's Club. And that man reportedly told authorities that he did it because he thought they were Chinese and that they were spreading the virus. Neither of those things was true. So it's hard to say what's in the heart of people who carry out these hateful attacks, but it's promising, Stephanie, to report that there are efforts to combat it. In California, lawmakers just passed a bill allocating $1.4 million to stop AAPIHate.org. That's an organization that's been tracking these incidents. This money will help them track it and also to help try to stop these hate incidents. Here in New York, police formed a permanent Asian hate crimes task force. They did this because they saw an 800% increase in hate incidents involving Asian American victims. So there are efforts, and we can all help and do our part. When you see discrimination, speak up, support the victim, report these incidents. You can't change it unless you acknowledge that it's happening. Steph?
Vicky, thank you so much, and thank you for continuing to report this. I want to bring in someone who has been fighting hate from the start of this pandemic, New York Congresswoman Grace Meng. She joins us now. Congresswoman, these attacks are everyday New Yorkers' worst nightmare. You represent one of the most diverse districts in the country. Are people scared to leave their houses?
Thank you, Stephanie, for covering this issue. People are increasingly scared to leave their homes, but the truth is the Asian American community has been scared to leave their homes for about the past year, not just because of the virus, but also because of the virus of discrimination and for fear of being attacked.
Here's what I don't get. It's not just your constituents. You yourself got vicious voicemails after your resolution that condemned hate. It passed in the House. Your resolution is just about stopping hate. You're not asking for an Asian advantage. What are these voicemails about? What are people fighting?
Well, I think that you hit the nail on the head. This resolution was a symbolic, unified way for Congress to say no to bigotry towards Asian Americans. But at the same time, know that 164 of my colleagues voted against that resolution. There is a lot of false rhetoric that has been going around, and it started from our former president, who kept using phrases like Kung flu and Chinese virus, and really directly empowered a lot of these attacks that are happening and false notions that Asian Americans had anything to do with this virus.
Are local authorities taking this seriously enough?
Well, I do want to thank many of our city and statewide elected officials, Mayor de Blasio, Senator Schumer, our Attorney General Tish James. They have all taken actions. As was mentioned earlier, New York City does have a hate crimes task force, but we need it to be more effective. We need local law enforcement, local community organizations to work closely with the federal government. I have legislation I'm introducing again that would give more tools to the Department of Justice to be able to collect data on these incidents, on these hate crimes, and give our communities more resources.
You mentioned before it was former President Trump who was fanning the flames. He's not in office right now. President Biden is, yet the numbers are surging. What do you make of that?
Well, President Trump just used these words yesterday and over the weekend. He's still going strong using these racial slurs. Yes, President Biden signed a presidential memorandum condemning this kind of bigotry and violence. I'm so thankful for his actions. And he also is directing his federal agencies that had parts of my bill in it where we would be able to have more resources on these sorts of incidents. And that's what we need. We need to shine more light. We need more people to speak up. And we need to remember that the answer to fighting racism is never more racism. It's solidarity. And I want to just say thank you to so many different community leaders from the Black, Latino, Native American communities who have stood up with us and for us.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.